Welcome to the New Zonderlings podcast, where we explore the weird and bizarre. Here are your hosts, Noah and Jeanette.
Hello and welcome to the New Zonderlings podcast. My name is Noah and I'm joined by my co-host Jeanette.
Okay, so I was looking at other things in England. There is a very famous inn in England that I wanted to talk about because this one seems to span all sorts of different poltergeisty type things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's called the Ancient Ram Inn.
Mm.
And I got this story from Utopia, and it's dated July 6, 2015.
Okay.
Couldn't decide if I wanted to say 2015.
2015.
Or 2015 there. Okay, it has been called the most haunted house in Britain, though how exactly one might measure, rank, or qualify such a thing is beyond me. Nevertheless, there are countless stories of ghost sightings at the Ancient Ram Inn. Then worse still are the tales of forceful interference, physical assault at this little old Gloucestershire pub. I struggle with these English names. Paranormal researchers have described a history of murders on the premises, the burning of a resident witch, a former innkeeper's daughter hanged in the attic, the bones of ritually murdered children buried under the floor.
Oh, jeez.
While the retired Reverend John Yates, former Bishop of Gloucester, is said to have called the Ancient Ram the most evil place I have ever had the misfortune to visit, following a failed attempt at exorcism.
Oh, yikes.
Intriguing, right? Even amongst supernatural investigators, the place has an unprecedented reputation. It lies on the crossing point of two ley lines, one of which runs directly from Stonehenge. Other researchers have claimed that the inn sits upon an ancient pagan burial ground. Locals will cross over the street, we're told, rather than walk past the Ancient Ram at night.
Wow. Is it still open?
Yes.
Yikes.
Well, it was as of this story, 2015.
Oh, okay.
Now standing for almost 1,000 years, the building has seen its share of residents come and go, and some have left more abruptly than others. Orbs have been photographed around the stairs and the attic. A variety of lights and apparitions have appeared, terrified visitors. A plumber working on the building once claimed to have seen a Roman centurion on horseback emerging from a wall, and the most aggressive manifestations have typically been reported around the notorious bishop's room. Some of the most alarming stories about the Ram, however, have been focused on the proprietor himself, John Humphreys. The building's owner since 1968 tells of being dragged from his bed violently by entities and violated routinely by the building's resident succubus.
Oh.
So the story did use a different word, but I said violated instead.
Oh, okay.
I know YouTube has a problem with the R word. So if I say violated, I'm replacing that this whole story. I have some pictures of this place I'm going to show Noah, but you feel free to look it up yourself. This article by Utopia does have a lot of pictures in it. So there's quite a bit for everybody to look at if they're interested in looking it up themselves. So we're going to talk about John Humphreys, who is the owner of the Ancient Ram Inn. In all the reports I have read about the Ancient Ram, its present owner, John Humphreys, has featured as prominently as any phantasm. Stories about this eccentric 86-year-old vary from person to person. Some make him out to be an unfortunate victim of the building's curse, a hero battling against demonic forces as he struggles to maintain an important relic of Wanton's early history. Others paint him rather as something of a con artist. I'm going to show Noah a picture of him. What do you think?
Oh my gosh. I love him.
I knew you'd love him.
He looks insane.
So I'm going to give you a description because the author of this article gives a description. I'm going to use his description. So we'll get to it here in a second. But he fits the bill. That's all I can say.
I love him.
John has lived in the building since 1968, and since then reports having been attacked on almost countless occasions by evil forces with which he shares his home. Aside from the usual slew of poltergeist reports, things going bump in the night, most notably in his claim of a succubus that lives in the ancient ram and which often torments visitors during their sleep. Succubi were first described in a Hebrew myth that placed them as the offspring of Adam's original wife, Lilith, preying on the sexual energies of humans. The succubi would later be linked to the sirens of other folklores. In the 15th century, a volume called the Malleus Maleficarum, does anybody know what that is? The witch's hammer.
Oh.
Posited a reproductive cycle whereas succubi stole seed from sleeping human males, somehow subverted it, and then that same seed would be used by the incubi to impregnate human females, who these women would subsequently give birth to deformed supernatural children. So there's a lot to unpack.
That's a lot.
In just that.
Yeah.
We're just going to move on.
Moving on.
During the Middle Ages, incubi and succubi were often blamed as the cause of erotic dreams. Some even welcomed them. And on his deathbed, Pope Sylvester II confessed to having had relations with a succubus that had used her influence in helping him to achieve rank and power within the church. That's on his deathbed. This is a
Yikes.
pope. A more contemporary explanation offers the succubus myth as a primitive system for making sense of distressing phenomena of sleep paralysis. So, I don't know what you think about all that, but old John Humphreys claims to have one. Who's he's impregnating or she's impregnating with his sperm, I don't know.
Let's not talk about that.
We're moving on. John was animated with his wild eyes that worked their way relentless back and forth across the group. So I'm going to catch you up with what's going on here. The author went to the pub to get a tour of this place. Okay. He was smaller than I expected. He was grayer too. I don't know what he expected of an 85-year-old man.
I just expect a little old gray man.
I would expect him to be grayer.
Yeah.
But
white haired even.
This author says he was grayer than he expected. More saggy and moved with the haunched yet quirky eagerness of a gnome or sprite. Dressed in a rugged tracksuit that had faded with time to nondescript grays and navy blues, with long white hair, a full beard, and those bright, eager eyes that never stopped moving about the room, John himself looked to be part of this world and part outside it. As for the ancient ram itself, the first thing I was aware of was the incredible clutter. Every conceivable space had been used, stacked high with books and magazines, or hung with stuffed toys, barometers, flags, and other ornaments. This part of the building, now featuring the kitchen and a sofa adapted for use as a downstairs bed, had once been a tack room for the former stables, occupying the far end of the ground floor. We later hear that diviners, or diviners, how do you want to say that?
Diviners.
Tomatoes. Diviners had located on old well beneath the floorboards a deep pit in which the bodies of murder victims had once been dumped. For those who don't know, diviners are people who use dowsing rods, usually to find water.
Right.
And they're also called well witches or water witches. The area around the well had been subject to nightly disturbances when the Humphreys family first moved in, though this had reportedly come to an end after John had placed a makeshift cross over the top of the well mouth.
That's all it took. Just a cross.
The inn was built in the year 1145. So a very old place, by the way. When William Fitz Robert, heir to the Lord Berkeley, had served as the first recorded rector of Wanton. Connected with the church, the original building was larger than its present form and had been a home to the local priests. According to John, however, the history of the site stretches way back before 1145 AD, but rather to sometime in the region of 3000 BC when a pagan burial ground had existed there. There's even a wooden post in the building that John claims have been dated back to 7,000 years, a time when his location hosted regular rituals involving human sacrifice. I couldn't find any concrete evidence for this story, though, only John's anecdotes, which came to him by way of dowsers visiting the ancient ram in recent years. Much of the town of Wanton was destroyed by fire in the region of in the reign of King John, but the ram survived. It would later house the craftsmen and slave laborers involved in the construction of the 13th century Church of St. Mary, the Virgin, in the rebuilt center of Watton. Situated on the marshy Potter's Pond, streams that crossed the inland had to be diverted in order to lay foundations for the church. Some have theorized that this redirection of water was instrumental in opening a portal for dark energy. As often is claimed of church architecture in the Middle Ages, the church was supposedly built on a ley line by intention. John points out any line drawn on a map from Stonehenge to the church would necessarily pass directly through the ancient Ram Inn. The site stands today as the oldest building in Watton-under-Edge, including among its various historical artifacts the oldest wooden window frame in Britain, as well as the earliest surviving board for the game Nine Men's Morris, which appears carved into a stone ingle nook dated 1540.
Wow.
So, very old place we're talking about.
A lot of history.
Later, the building would be converted to serve as an inn. In 1930, it was sold to one Maurice de Bath and has changed hands several more times since. However, the building was slipping into decline. Supposedly, it had already earned the reputation for hauntings, though few accounts have seemed to have survived before the time John Humphreys took over. By 1965, it was losing custom. The wooden beams had fallen prey to an infestation of death watch beetle, while the dry stone walling was crumbling fast. So that's the death watch beetle is another interesting thing we'll have to do a story on. The building was listed for demolition as part of the council plan to widen the road, but it was saved when John Humphreys, a former train driver, purchased the property from Whitboard Brewery in 1968 for a sum of £2,600. John moved straight into the inn, bringing his wife and 3 daughters with him. The place was semi-derelict, however, had no running water, and still doesn't to this day, and these factors, combined with the ghostly encounters that John reports experiencing from day one, soon put pressure on the family. John Humphreys lost his wife, his money, and for a while his relationship with his children, as he stubbornly refused to move out of the ancient ram. Mm-hmm. And I suggest really that everybody look up pictures of this place, because I don't know who would want to live there.
Is it bad?
It's just horrible. It's just creepy. And he has purposely, as you'll see here in the next couple paragraphs, placed things to make it more creepy. So, the men's kitchen. Our energetic tour guide launched us immediately into the tales of various phantasmagoria reported in this space. Where we stood, he explained, on the former burial ground, and it was here that many visitors had heard the sounds of a baby crying. A woman was murdered here by a highwayman, and she continues to haunt the building. Electronics have been known to fail in this room, with camera batteries mysteriously draining themselves. In July 2003, the Ghost Club, a paranormal investigation team founded in 1862, paid a visit to the ram and photographed a number of orbs here in the men's kitchen, floating above John's head. They also reported a moving electronic frequency hotspot. Hotspot. The main attraction of the men's kitchen, however, was the ancient grave, a fact made abundantly clear by a helpful sign planted into exposed soil along with a cross and a shovel in the back corner of the room. Around the grave, barrels, keyboards, and Egyptian-style ceramic ornaments have been piled into a kind of chaotic amphitheater. Overhead, a stuffed crow hung from a wooden ceiling beam by fishing wire. It turns slowly as if in flight, moving by an invisible breeze. So I think what he's trying to say is this place has been done to be creepy, okay?
Yeah.
That's where they found the little children's bones, John told us. He was referring to a group of ghost hunters from nearby Swindon who came in June of 1997, were given permission to tear up parts of the concrete floor while searching for the entrance of a sealed cellar. Instead, they found a grave containing the remains of a woman and child buried along with broken iron shards. The pieces were analyzed by a Bristol museum, who conceded that the signs may point to ritual sacrifice using an iron dagger. The ghost hunters, meanwhile, suffered a car crash on their way home. Coincidence? John thinks not.
Of course not.
The discovery of the grave had come as little surprise, though. He explained to us it was here that John had slept directly above the grave on his very first night in the ancient ram. The way he tells it, an invisible force grabbed him by the ankle and yanked him violently clear of his bed. Ever since then, he'd known that something lay hidden beneath the spot. On the ground floor, close to the roadside, a large and largely an underdeveloped space of the ancient ram is formed of the former stables of the property, the Mayflower Barn. Some accounts have described this as a makeshift living room or seating area, though at the time of my visit, it was so crammed full of junk and debris that one could be hard-pressed to find a place to sit. When the television program Most Haunted came to the ancient ram, the team's resident spirit medium, Derek Okra, was possessed by an entity that told the team to visit the barn. In this space beneath these same ancient beams, one presenter was set upon by an invisible force that threw him to the floor before beating and kicking him. In the program's conclusion, they offered the attack as proof of the physical manifestation. Though without showing bruises of any other kind actual evidence, I feel the verbal testimony remains little way of short of proof. Nevertheless, this wasn't the first time visitors to the barn had experienced such attacks. One 18-year-old ghost hunter had previously claimed to be thrown to the floor by an unseen force, while John himself has seen strained lights here and been pinned against the wall while the dividing curtains were torn apart. I don't really know what that's supposed to mean.
I don't know either.
A father and son team once fled the space after witnessing a ghost rising from the floor, while a tall 7-foot shadow has been sighted rushing through the barn and out the door. We passed upstairs next, a narrow set of stairs that ran up the first floor, overlooked by the stuffed ram's head pinned to the stone wall at the top. Some visitors, John informed us, had been thrown down the stairs by unseen hands. In 1999, an image captured by paranormal investigator Julie Hunt appears to show a pillar of white mist ascending the staircase. Meanwhile, Mike Driscoll from the group UK Paranormal reports having been shoved down these stairs by invisible forces on no less than 3 separate occasions. See that grandfather clock? John was explaining. Well, that's haunted too. There seems to be very little in the house, furniture included, that didn't come with its own curse attached. The story there was that a human face had been known to appear in the clock face. I looked closely, but only saw glimpses of my own features reflected back in the polished warped wood. So, lots of stuff going on here. There obviously have been a lot of investigations by paranormal teams or ghost hunters into this place. The next is the bishop's room. The stories surrounding this particular room are many. It is supposed to be the most haunted part of the building, and during the Ram's time as a functioning inn, many ghosts would refuse to stay in the room. Others unwittingly checked into the bishop's room, only to run out screaming in the middle of the night. There were reports of furniture flying about the room on its own, and one time a medium was thrown down the corner on attempting to open the door. Other sightings in the room include spectral monks, as well as the plumber who came face to face with the ghost of a mounted centurion. The cavalier had been seen appearing by the dressing table before walking across the room. There are reports of a young woman hanging in the ceiling beams, a shepherd with his dog, and screams of a man who at some point supposedly was killed by having his head thrust into the fireplace. Those who spent the night there would sometimes tell of presence that climbed onto the bed alongside them before pinning them down and interfering with them. John's legendary succubus. Back in 1999, Mark and Julie Hunt, the same ghost hunters who photographed a pillar of mist in the staircase, reported extreme cold spots inside this room, watching dancing lights that resembled fireflies, and even catching an image of a hooded figure behind the dressing table. John claims that tame dogs have suddenly attacked their owners in the room, and that 2 investigators who spent the night here later had to visit a vicar in order to be exorcised. A handwritten sign lay on the far bed, alongside a tear in the sheets, explaining that these were stab marks caused by evil devil worshippers. John illustrated the point, showing us artifacts that he had once removed from the chimney space. There was a round block of wood with a wedge cut out and a small iron horseshoe, both of which, we were told, had been sealed inside the brickwork for more than 200 years. Our guide explained that they were fetishes used in rituals of devil worship, a goat's cloven hoof. I don't know why. Okay. But he just hand wrote this note next to a tear in the sheet. There's a picture of it. The last stop on the tour was the attic, the area formerly used by weavers, and they called it the Weaver's Attic, which is now divided between a bedroom and an adjacent open space formed between wooden boards and beams. John's daughter lived up there at one stage, he told us, along with her partner. They often would hear sounds of something heavy being dragged across the floor. Visitors to the building have echoed the same story, particularly those sleeping in the bishop's room directly beneath the open attic. According to some, the Weaver's attic is haunted by the ghost of an innkeeper's daughter, murdered here in the loft sometime in the 1500s, and named by one visiting medium as Elizabeth. The Ghost Club claimed to have photographed mysterious mists on their visit to the attic, as well as registered abnormalities in electromagnetic frequencies. Another team of ghost hunters reported the sound of a dog panting. The Most Haunted team, however, and that's the name of their team, The Most Haunted, on entering the attic space, broke into the hysterics when their camera gear malfunctioned and spirit medium Derek Acra became possessed by a vengeful presence. So, I mean, they've got much more to say, but I'm going to end the story here because of the time, of course. But I just want to say that all the pictures of this place, almost every room features a Ouija board.
Of course it does.
Many skulls, which that's right up your alley, Noah. Lots of taxidermy dead animals. So they've got heads of just about every animal you can imagine. A lot of rams and goats everywhere. So I can't help but feel like, and just creepy things. Like the author of the story says a lot that the stuff was just mismatched and gave it a very ominous feel of, you were uncomfortable with it because everything was so mismatched and there was things that just didn't belong there. And I can't help but think that that's on purpose.
It's like a hoarder of a haunted house.
I do want to say, though, before I end it completely, that the author, he was skeptical. Obviously, I think you can get that from his writing. But this guy that owns it, John Humphreys, he does these tours on good faith. He doesn't charge any kind of set amount. It's just whatever kind of tip you want to give him. And the author did say when he left, he gave him 20 pounds, and John Humphreys actually starts crying. He said the other people that were in his tour group, there was 4 other kids there with him, and I say kids, he called them kids. I suspect teenagers. Only gave him some change.
Oh, man.
But when this author gave him the 20 pounds, he did feel like he was so grateful, and he actually started crying, and he tried to give the money back. And so the author didn't feel like this was just for monetary gain for this guy.
Right.
Because, people weren't giving him
he's not making the money.
Yeah, I kind of feel like he was like a town joke.
Yeah.
So to say. Sad. Which I feel, well, you can tell from his picture, he looks like a lunatic. So
he looks amazing.
Noah loves him. He does look like a very eccentric old man, but this is 2015, so the odds are he's no longer with us. Most
likely.
I did not get around to looking at what the state of the Ram is in today. I would say that I hope it's still open, but who knows? I mean, he was 85 in 2015, so odds are he is not still alive.
I was gonna say.
Maybe we'll do an update story on this at some point to see what's going on with the ancient Ram Inn nowadays. But I think that's a good place to end it. What do you think, Noah?
Yeah, it was. I definitely want to visit this place now. If it's still there. Yeah.
Apparently, it's quite a trek to get to this place. It's kind of out there.
All the best places are.
Yeah. So if you like this story, if you want more like it, you have anything to add, leave us a comment.
Like what you heard? Leave us a message on our website at newsonderlings.com. Follow us on Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, X, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the News Underlings podcast. Be sure to check out other episodes of this podcast when Noah and Jeanette will once again explore the weird and bizarre right here on the News Underlings podcast.